East here in the UK. And I'm also the Vice Chair of the Brazil Solidarity Initiative, and I'll be chairing this evening. You may have heard a bell in the background. We are about to vote. So before I start, we have an announcement about translation.
Hello, everyone. My name's Matthew from the Brazil Solidarity Initiative. Just to say that you can watch this meeting on Zoom in full in language of your choice, either English or Portuguese. And there is a button at the bottom of the Zoom screen which says interpretation, where you can choose your channel. And that's the language you want to listen in. So I'd advise you to change your channel to English or Portuguese now, rather than during the meeting, so you don't miss anything. If you are joining us now on Facebook or YouTube, please, if you do need translation, move over to the Zoom link, which is provided on those channels. If you are on Zoom, you can now change your channel using the interpretation button at the bottom. And also to say that we will be posting the full video later, which you can also rewatch. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And it's an incredible honor to chair this very important meeting today. But also, I know that we are meeting today under very tragic circumstances, as we know now that Brazil's reporting over 50,000 coronavirus deaths and over 1 million cases. And sadly, analysts are saying that this is only the tip of the iceberg. So we know that Brazil's far-right President Jair Bolsonaro has consistently dismissed the COVID-19 as just a fantasy, actively stoking ignorance around the pandemic and hatred towards those speaking out against him. He has recklessly, in my view, refused to put people and health first. And alarmingly, the Pan American Health Organization has issued an alert regarding the fast spreading of COVID-19 in the Amazon and amongst Brazil's indigenous population. This global health crisis has shown that the likes of Bolsonaro, alongside Donald Trump, are far from champions of the poor and excluded, but in fact will always put the interest of big business first. And while opposition continues to grow to Bolsonaro's inhumane response to the pandemic across society, we are proud to take a stand tonight with the millions of Brazilians fighting for public health. At the time of the global Black Lives Matter uprising, we must stand, of course, with those people in Brazil protesting against racism and for real change. We are also here to call on our own government to stop facilitating authoritarianism, environmental destruction, and racism in Brazil. What I want you to do is, if you could all please tweet about this meeting using the hashtag Fora Bolsonaro, hashtag FORA Bolsonaro. And other social media actions will be posted, obviously, during this event. We now also know through the Freedom of Information requests of previously undisclosed meetings that British officials met Bolsonaro before, during, and after the election campaign, including when Boris Johnson was Foreign Secretary. So this is the context in which we are operating here today for this meeting. We have an incredible and special lineup tonight with lifelong international activists, our very own Jeremy Corbyn joining us, and also joining us from Brazil, we have the world-renowned journalist Greenwald, who, as many will know, played an important role in exposing the shocking scale of international and domestic surveillance in the US, and in exposing the political motivation behind the jailing of the former Brazilian President Lula. Finally, it's absolutely an honor to have the former President Dilma Rousseff speak to us tonight as well. Dilma was the the last legitimate president of Brazil, having been removed through a parliamentary coup in 2016. So it's an absolute honor to have her here as well. What has followed since has been the systematic dismantling of workers' rights, education, healthcare and social security, and environmental and indigenous protections. And we can't obviously allow that to continue. So solidarity with those Brazilians fighting for social progress, equality and public health, which is more important than ever before. So let us show our support and thank you for being with us here tonight. If you require a translation, then please just click the interpretation button. And I don't know, Matthew, if you just want to explain that.
Yeah, sorry for just coming in on this again. If you want a translation for the meeting, Glenn will be speaking in English, Jeremy will be speaking in English, and Dilma will be speaking in Portuguese. So if you change your channel now using interpretation at the bottom on Zoom, you can change it to Portuguese for the whole meeting or English for the whole meeting. It's much easier to do that now and listen throughout the whole meeting. If you're on Facebook or if you're on YouTube and you want translation, the Zoom link is available on the Facebook event. So please do come onto the Zoom if you require translation. If you don't, then obviously it will be streamed through on those channels as well. And just to say, we have about 800 people now watching on the different channels. So thank you everyone for joining.
Brilliant. Thank you, Matthew. And look, I want to take us to our first speaker and just really to be proud to be able to introduce Glenn Greenwald. And in introducing Glenn Greenwald, I just want to say a few things about him. I'm delighted, of course, to introduce Glenn because he's an outstanding Brazilian-based journalist. Glenn is co-founder of the Intercept, at which he's currently an investigative reporter. Previously, Glenn won the Pulitzer Prize for reporting on the groundbreaking national security documents leaked by Edward Snowden. Glenn has reported on some of the biggest scandals of the Bolsonaro presidency, including the corruption of Justice Minister Sergio Moro, Operation Car Crush, and Lula's illegitimate imprisonment and disqualification from the 2018 presidential election. Glenn is a fearless reporting on these matters. And so without further ado, I want to introduce Glenn Greenwald.
Hi, everybody. Good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you are. It's the afternoon here in Brazil. It's the evening in the UK. First of all, thank you so much to Claudia for that excellent and very generous introduction. It's really an honor to sit on the panel with an MP who is doing such important work for the United Kingdom. And it's also an honor to be on a panel with two of my other political heroes, including Jeremy Corbyn and the former president of Brazil, Dilma Rousseff, whose 2016 impeachment, as Claudia alluded to, was, in my view, the first really serious and grave attack on Brazilian democracy, the deliberate attempt to unravel Brazilian democracy out of anger that the elites of Brazil could not figure out a way to defeat the Workers' Party of former President Lula da Silva and then former President Dilma Rousseff, legitimately and democratically at the ballot box. They had lost 4 consecutive national elections beginning in 2002 through 2016. And so through that frustration, decided that the only way that they could remove the Workers' Party from power is to subvert the processes of democracy itself, and that disgusting farce that the world witnessed of the most corrupt people in the world standing up in the Brazilian Congress and the Brazilian Senate pretending to be angry over corruption when their real goal was essentially a legislative coup is really what paved the way, along with the corrupt prosecutors and judge who oversaw the corruption probe, to the election of Bolsonaro in 2018. So it's an honor to be on a panel with Dilma, whose presidency not only did so much good for Brazilians, but also whose impeachment is a true disgrace, a historic shame on Brazil, and something that created an enormous amount of damage for this country that I have lived in for 15 years and that I love very much. The situation in Brazil is indescribably tragic right now because it is plagued by three extraordinary crises at once, all of which are interlinked and can't really be understood without understanding all three of them, because they all feed into and explain and worsen one another. So one of those crises is obviously the coronavirus pandemic. The other is the economic suffering that has been caused by the pandemic and by all that follows from it. And then the other is the very concerted attack that is continuing to be waged against Brazilian democracy by Jair Bolsonaro and by his movement, an attack that is leading the country to a virtually inevitable reckoning about whether we're going to continue to be a country that lives under the Constitution and the rule of law and democratic principles, which the country created in 1985 when it exited a 21-year military dictatorship that was the result of a coup in 1964, supported by both the United States and the United Kingdom, or whether it's going to revert back to its darkest days of the 60s and the 70s and up to the mid 80s, when the country lived under serious repression, where no dissent was tolerated. So in the midst of trying to confront a hideous pandemic, one that has been made so much worse by not just the ineptitude of the Bolsonaro government, but by the malice of the Bolsonaro government, as well as by a severe economic plague that is fueled in large part by longstanding economic inequality and structural racism in Brazil. There's also now, in the midst of all of that, a very real fight to simply defend the vestiges of Brazilian democracy under attack, paradoxically, from the president who was elected in 2018. So I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about Bolsonaro and the coronavirus, because I think it has become somewhat of a consensus in the international press that Bolsonaro, among all of the world leaders of major countries, has by far handled the coronavirus worse than any other. But it's really hard to overstate how true that is. Obviously, there were other major world leaders like Donald Trump in the United States and Boris Johnson in the UK who failed to take the pandemic seriously at first, who mocked its seriousness, who offered all kinds of illusory and unscientific ways of trying to respond to it, whether Boris Johnson suggesting that there ought to just be a free path on the part of the virus to just run through the population and create herd immunity, or Donald Trump touting highly unscientific treatments or cures over and over. But eventually they kind of got pressured and forced by the reality of the pandemic into speaking about it more seriously and taking it more seriously, at least as compared to what they were doing at first. Whereas for Bolsonaro, that hasn't been true at all. If anything, he's gotten worse as the pandemic has killed more and more Brazilians. He continues to mock it. He purposely seeks out crowds and, without wearing masks, dives into them in order to encourage other people to do that. Brazil is on its third health minister in the last 3 months, the first of whom, two of whom were either fired or forced to quit because they insisted on following the science, and now a third of whom is in an interim position. He's filled the health ministry with members of the military who have no experience in any kind of health or science matters, let alone dealing with the pandemic. And I think it's fair to say that Brazil is now the epicenter of the COVID-19 crisis in the world. It doesn't yet have as many deaths or as many confirmed cases as the United States, although it's clearly in second place, despite being a country of 100 million fewer people. But its epidemiological curve is still continuing to increase in an extremely disturbing way. And worse than that, it's just ill-equipped to deal with this number of people who are sick and dying, because its healthcare system, due to that massive income inequality that's longstanding, was really not equipped to deal with the population even before the pandemic, let alone now. But I think the important thing to note about Bolsonaro, all the things that he said that Claudia alluded to, mocking it as a little flu, claiming that if you're under 60, you have nothing to worry about, encouraging people to go out on the streets. It wasn't just inept. It was really deliberate. It was a deliberate plan from the beginning that continues to this day, because every country had to decide whether they were going to prioritize the public health over economic prosperity. And in the case of Brazil, the concerted effort was made on the part of the government to deprioritize the public health and to demand that the economy stay open and reopen. And the reason for that is very ugly. It's not a failure to accept the science. It's a decision about which lives are valuable and which lives aren't. Because the rich in Brazil have always exerted overwhelming power, and they obviously want the economy to reopen so that international capital stays in Brazil and they can continue to attract it, so that the Brazilian stock market continues to increase, so that the companies that they own can continue to do business, because they know that reopening the economy means that they don't have to go out onto the street and contract the virus, that it's essentially the poor, the people of color in Brazil who always bear the burdens of all crises, who will be forced to be sacrificed for the benefit and the interest of Brazil's riches. That is the really ugly reality of what the Bolsonaro government is trying to do, is to sacrifice a large part of the population for the economic benefit of a small portion of people whose interests are always prioritized due to wealth and race and status. And I think that one of the things that we have to realize as well is that with this virus, we heard in the beginning, this coronavirus doesn't discriminate. It's going to be something that brings us all together. I think it's really proven to be untrue. It seems very clear at this point that the quality of one's healthcare, how much early medical intervention you have once you contract the virus, how much testing is available, is an enormous factor in determining outcomes. And so that's why we see this virus falling disproportionately on Black and brown people and poor people in every country in the world. And obviously in Brazil, if you have access to private healthcare, your chances are much, much better than if you have to wait a week to get into public hospital, and where you get very little attention. And that's one of the reasons why this crisis has hit so hard in Brazil, because of these pre-existing inequalities and systemic racial injustices that are making everything far worse. And then on top of that, you have a president, Jair Bolsonaro, who is exploiting the crisis to further his political radicalism. There was a cabinet meeting that was taped, and the tape ended up being released to the public, in which his very anti-environment minister, Ricardo Salles, who has become notorious for deliberately sacrificing the Amazon for industrial interests, said, we can exploit this crisis to go and do what we want in the Amazon. No one cares because everybody's looking at coronavirus. And they're clearly attempting to erode public faith in the Supreme Court and in the Congress and in the media and in citizen protest. Anything that can impede the Bolsonaro movement is also being weakened and attacked under the guise of this virus. And so it's really watching almost every institution that matters, every sector of the population that matters, be under assault, not just by a virus, but by a government that really has contempt for all of that, for everyone but itself. And it's really quite sad, because every time, as somebody who's lived in Brazil for 15 years, who's married to a Brazilian congressman, who has 2 Brazilian children, who intends to stay in Brazil more or less permanently, it's always been a country with so much potential, so much beauty, not just natural beauty, but cultural beauty and beauty in its population. And every time it looks as though it's finally getting on track, something comes and knocks it off. And the only hope that I have, and it is a real hope, without trying to put a silver lining on what is a very dark cloud, is that just like we see in the United States of people reacting to the Trump presidency, by protesting more than ever before, by courts being more active but more than ever before, by media being more vibrant in its opposition, I think people in Brazil are starting to realize that they have not just the power, but the responsibility to oppose a government that is assaulting everything that is important to them, including their lives, their health, their democracy, their economic prosperity. And I do believe that at the end of this tunnel, there is that light, that the Bolsonaro government is so malicious, so glaringly contemptuous, that it's making people open their eyes and realize the power that they have in their hands for the first time in a way that gives me a lot of hope for the future, which I think is important to have, particularly when you're being subsumed by multiple crises that are being exacerbated by people who are deliberately worsening them and deliberately playing on them. So I think these kind of discussions are crucial. Brazil is an immensely important country. It's the 5th most populous country in the world. It's the biggest country in Latin America. It has the most important environmental resource in the world for averting catastrophic climate scenarios, which is the Amazon. It has immense oil reserves that can be extracted more safely than others. It's an incredibly important country on all levels for the planet. And how it's governed and how its people and resources are treated is of immense importance, not just to those of us here in Brazil, but everybody on the planet. So I'm really grateful for this event that can bring more light on the situation in Brazil. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Glenn. I think Claudia Webbe is voting right now in the House of Commons. So we are down a chairperson. So I am filling in temporarily. Just to say, you can post your questions in the Q&A section for this event. And also please post in the Q&A section where you're from, because we've got about 1,500 people watching us now on Facebook, YouTube, and here on Zoom all over the world. So it's great for us to be able to acknowledge and know where you're from. And just a reminder yet again that if you want interpretation on Zoom, there is a button at the bottom of the screen, and you can just select your language now for the whole meeting out of Portuguese or English. The other thing that I would urge you to do is tweet along as we go with the hashtag for Bolsonaro, which is of course the hashtag of the mass movement against the repulsive far-right president in Brazil. And I'm thinking that Claudia will be voting for some time, because people may or may not know that our reactionary Prime Minister decided it was a really good idea to bring back a physical parliament really early, which means it takes a very long time to vote every time, because you have to get in a very long queue where you wait in a socially distanced manner to vote, rather than online voting, which we were using previously. So please do put where you're from in the Q&A. And without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, the former leader of the Labour Party, the MP for Islington North, and most of all and most importantly, a campaigner for international solidarity, peace, and in solidarity with the people of Latin America and Brazil for many years. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome to this meeting Jeremy Corbyn. Thank you, Jeremy.
Matt, thank you very much. And Matt, first of all, thanks to you for organising this event today. Very important, very significant event. And thanks to Claudia Webbe for chairing it. She will be back. Somebody is voting on my behalf in Parliament through the proxy system, so I'm not missing the vote because I wanted to be on this call today, which is a very, very important one. Could I also say what an absolute pleasure it is to be on a call with Glenn. And Glenn, thanks for all you've done, not just in what you've said today, but what you've done over many, many years to support human rights, peace, democracy, and justice, and the way in which you've exposed corruption in so many ways. Glenn, thank you very much. And it's also a great honour to be able to speak on the same platform as Dilma. And it was wonderful when she came to see me in my office when she was visiting Britain a couple of years ago. This was after, unfortunately, she had been removed as president of Brazil. But I want to say thank you to Dilma for the way in which you conduct yourself, the strength you've shown during your time as president and since then. And of course, on this call, let's send a message of support and solidarity to Lula for all that he's been through, because his presidency and his government and the Workers' Party tried to deal with the levels of inequality and poverty in Brazil, bring about real hope to the very poorest communities, particularly those in the northeast of Brazil. And I hope that throughout this very difficult period, we'll all remember that our work together now will bring about a better future for an awful lot of people, not just in Brazil, but also in Europe, in Mexico, in the USA, and so many other places around the world. So us today having a global call on Brazil is very important. And the one thing that has come as a positive, and there's many, many negatives that are positive out of the corona crisis, has been that people have seen the environmental damage that excessive pollution does. And they've also seen the opportunity to communicate with each other by these means, by Zoom calls, by conference calls, and by a visual presence. Let's keep that together in the future and carry on with that form of communication so that we are talking directly to each other. I want to talk firstly about the corona crisis and then about austerity and the environmental crisis, but I'll be as brief as I can, otherwise Matt will stop me, and I don't want to take time out of Dilma's talk as well. The corona crisis was identified by the World Health Organization in early January, when they noticed that there was a novel and unusual virus appeared in Wuhan province in China. And they notified, as they're required to do, every government around the world of it. They then said, a very short time later, this is potentially of epidemic proportions and appropriate action should be taken in China to isolate the source of the virus. A short time after that, they said that, in fact, it was a pandemic. A pandemic, therefore, it is of global significance in the same way that they've identified other viri in the past. SARS, Ebola, and others that have been very, very serious, requiring all governments to take the appropriate action. And as Glenn pointed out, many governments around the world took the immediate and appropriate action, isolating those that were carriers of it, doing everything they could to try to ensure that people were protected and made safe from it. Some governments behaved differently. I sat in meetings with ministers in the British government who told me, this was early this year, that there was a concept of something called herd immunity, which Glenn explained. Utterly ludicrous, antediluvian, 17th century response to a pandemic. That is, you allow the population to be infected, many would die as a result of it, but those that survived would be stronger as a result of it. It was the theories of Charles Darwin that helped us to understand the process of evolution. Have they forgotten that the science has developed a protection against many of the world's worst diseases? Polio, smallpox, diphtheria, and so many others. And other governments responded with equally bizarre statements, particularly President Trump, who at one level was dealing with the crisis and then announced it was over, and then incited people in particular states in the USA to demand the end of lockdown when the elected governors of those states were saying their state was not ready to end lockdown. They had to continue with lockdown in order to chase down the virus and help those people that suffered from it. In my country, Britain, over 40,000 people have died who have been identified as suffering from COVID at the time that they died. In the USA, the number is even greater. Globally, we're talking of figures that are looking well over 400,000, towards 500,000 people across the world have died as a result of that. And the effects of it have not been even across the world. Countries that had a universal health service, universal access to health care, that had a care system and a national health service, just as we have in Britain, coped with it rather better. But in my case, in Britain's case, 10 years of austerity has meant our NHS had 94% bed occupancy in December. And it's only the superhuman efforts of people at all levels in the National Health Service, from cleaners through to consultants through to directors, that have made sure that many people have been helped and supported and saved because of this. But it's been lowly paid, often migrant workers that have paid the price, that have died as a result of working in our NHS and care homes in order to try and protect people. But in other countries where there isn't a very comprehensive health service, the death rates have been even higher. Look at what's happened in India and a number of other places. And then you look at the situation in Brazil. Look at the role that Bolsonaro has played in this, and look at the very high rate of death that has happened in Brazil as a result of the corona crisis. And our solidarity with those people in the health service in Brazil, and those people that are doing their best to protect people against contamination and infection, our support and solidarity to them. But it seems quite ludicrous when you have the president openly saying that any measures to prevent the contamination, prevent infection, are not necessary, seems to me to be irresponsible in the extreme. And our support to those people that are trying to ensure that Brazil has a rational response. But many people have died in the poorest communities. Those living in poor quality housing, those living in very overcrowded conditions, clearly are more likely to be cross-contaminated and infected because of the housing conditions under which they live. So our call today has to be to learn some of the international lessons about this. Learn the lessons of the danger of not having access to healthcare around the world. Learn the lessons of the importance of people that are often looked down upon, people that clean our hospitals, clean our buses, clean our trains, people that look after us who are often not very well paid as a result. And in the Prime Minister's question time session that we had in our Parliament at the end of March, I asked, yes, a rhetorical question. I said, who's more important now, today, a cleaner in a hospital or a financial speculator against the success or otherwise of our public services? You all know the answer to that. We have to, post-COVID, recognize the value of all those who work at all levels within our society. And we have to ensure that we don't go into a period of austerity at the end of this, as the whole world did after the 2008 and 2009 financial crisis. But there's also an environmental aspect to this. Places that are the worst polluted, places that have the least and lowest quality of public health and environmental protection have suffered the most. We cannot go on polluting our planet, destroying our ecosystem, polluting our rivers, destroying the life systems in our oceans without all paying a human price at the end of it. Because of the lockdown, some people around the world, for the first time in their lives, have breathed relatively clean air. For the first time in their lives, young people in Delhi have seen the beauty of some of the wonderful buildings there, and the same goes for other places around the world. And so the message of environmental sustainability and a green industrial revolution that provides jobs and opportunities at the same time as defending our planet for the future, is something that has united people all across the globe. And so when there was universal concern, fear, terror about the burning of the Amazon rainforest, people were saying, well, why is it being done? Is it being done in order for there to be a short-term advantage for those that can briefly exploit the soil riches of a former forest, and which is then laid waste a short time after that? So I say our solidarity is with everyone in Brazil who wants to protect the natural world and environment you've got and bring about social justice for people all across Brazil. And so our response has to be a global one. The movements of the left in the United States, principally around Bernie Sanders' presidential bids, and the movement that was created around it. Whilst Bernie, sadly, is not going to be the Democrat nominee for the presidency, I think what Bernie did by his candidacy is unleashed and inspired a whole generation of people who stopped being afraid of the word socialist and started to think about socialism, about sharing, about the ability to work differently and to run our society differently. And so I think today we should just spare one moment to say well done to AOC, to Alexandria Ortiz-Cotain, for her success in the primary in New York yesterday. Well done her. Her voice will be a global voice for decades to come, of that I'm sure. And in this country, whilst I am obviously very, very sad we didn't win the general election in December, I led our party into that election. I was determined to put forward an agenda which would bring people together, that would invest in social justice, invest in a green energy future, and ensure that communities and people weren't left behind, and the grotesque levels of inequality in Britain would become a thing of the past. I was accused of being a spendthrift for wanting to invest too much money. More than that has already been spent in dealing with the crisis that we have at the present time. So the message we put forward has got through into the strangest of places. And so during this corona crisis, people have come together in a way they possibly never expected to. Volunteers in communities have come together to help each other. In my own community here in Inner London, a very mixed community, people have come together to help out at food banks and food hubs to make sure everybody gets something to eat, to support those that have not been supported by the government. That sense of unity isn't going to go away. That sense of determination isn't going to go away. So let's make sure that we do really continue to build the global movement that is already there to invest in healthcare, to support an environmentally sustainable future, to support rights at work, and not allow the world to be run by unaccountable global corporations, or to be run by those that want to divert our attentions away from all that by starting wars where they're not wanted. Refugees around the world are the victims of environmental injustice, human rights abuse, and the wars that were illegal and unnecessary. So our unity coming together is what's so important. And I look forward to working with Dilma, with Lula, with Bernie, with AOC, and with people all around the world in this global movement. And you know what? When we talk to each other in our own languages, when we communicate with each other in our own languages, we're incredibly strong and incredibly powerful. That is a force for the future. Let's be hopeful, let's be optimistic, let's be determined, and let's learn the lessons that the COVID crisis has taught us. The only way forward is people working together. Our health, individual health, is only as strong and secure as the health of our neighbor and their neighbor and their neighbor and their neighbor. You get my meaning? A healthy world is a healthy world for everyone. An unequal world is a dangerous world, first for the poorest people and then eventually for everybody else.
Thank you, Jeremy. And this is just a final announcement. I know I've said this a few times now about interpretation. Because Dilma will be speaking in Portuguese, if you wish to hear her in English, you need to switch to the English channel on the interpretation button at the bottom. Sorry to keep announcing this, but obviously we don't want anyone to miss any of it. Just to say, we've got people watching from all over the world, from New Zealand, from the USA, from Brazil, of course, all over England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland, and much more. And I'm delighted now to reintroduce Claudia Webbe, who is back from voting. Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you very much, Matt, and thanks for stepping in there to chair that session. And that was such an important and powerful testimony there from Jeremy. And I think you've highlighted what is the situation right here in the UK and what a true internationalist you really are. And it's absolutely brilliant in terms of what you've said. I just want to ask people to just please remember to follow the Brazil Solidarity Initiative on social media. And if you are able to donate and help cover the cost of tonight's meeting, I'd also like to take the time to talk about the upcoming International Social Media Day of Action this weekend. Our volunteers will post details in the chat. Finally, it's my greatest pleasure to introduce the former President Dilma Rousseff, the last legitimate elected president of Brazil. And if everyone who requires a translation, could you please just select the English interpretation channel now? Over to you, Dilma.
Eu queria iniciar cumprimentando a Claudia Webbe, a nossa moderadora e essa parlamentar, que é uma guerreira, a quem eu agradeço essa cadeia de solidariedade internacional ao Brasil. Queria cumprimentar esse grande líder do Partido Trabalhista, Jeremy Corbyn, a quem eu tive a honra de visitar e que sempre mostrou essa imensa capacidade de solidariedade internacional. algo que é fundamental em qualquer país e em qualquer luta pela transformação. E queria dirigir um agradecimento especial ao Glenn Greenwald. Eu agradeço o Glenn por ter optado por morar no Brasil. E agradeço por duas grandes contribuições que eu assisti à sua ação jornalística dar para o mundo. Primeiro é o caso dos arquivos que o Edward Snowden possuía e que, de fato, de uma certa forma, me envolvia na medida em que ele revelou os grampos sobre o meu gabinete como presidenta da República e a empresa Petrobras. Então, eu queria agradecer por isso. Mas, sobretudo, eu queria agradecer por ter revelado algo fundamental para entender o golpe de Estado no Brasil, que foi a destruição do sistema de justiça, ao comprometer duas coisas: a neutralidade do sistema, principalmente do juiz, e ao comprometer a imparcialidade de julgamento. Isso significou que ele revelou, através do que nós convencionamos chamar a vaza-jato, ou seja, os vazamentos que levaram à elucidação do grande complô, que foi um instrumento estrutural para o golpe de Estado, na medida que tentava destruir, utilizando de manipulações da justiça, da estrutura do judiciário, destruir um partido político que era o PT e seu grande líder, que era o presidente Lula. Mas eu quero dizer que eu concordo com ele também, porque nós vivemos no Brasil um momento em que 3 crises estão atuando conjuntamente. Primeiro é a do Covid-19, é a crise do coronavírus, é uma crise sanitária, que diz respeito ao fato de que, até agora, o único instrumento efetivo de combate da doença é o isolamento social, porque não tem nem vacinas, nem medicamentos que possam impedir que, primeiro, a doença se alastre e os sistemas de saúde não tenham condição de atender a todos os contaminados e evitar que as pessoas morram. Isso é muito grave. Por quê? Porque a outra alternativa é uma alternativa quase genocida, que é a contaminação do rebanho. Deixa contaminar, os mais fracos morrerão e tudo voltará ao normal. É o que é a proposta da contaminação do rebanho. Então, a crise do coronavírus acirra a crise econômica e as características sociais da sociedade sobre a qual a pandemia atingiu, ou seja, o planeta inteiro. Qual é o efeito dela? Tem um efeito econômico, que é, ao você ter o isolamento social, você paralisa a economia. A paralisação da demanda e a ruptura das cadeias de produção provocam uma grande crise econômica. O que os países têm de fazer? Saber que isso vai acontecer e que qualquer pensamento que coloca ou fecha a economia ou abre é um pensamento doentio e maluco, porque a crise econômica, cada vez que você abrir a economia sem um controle mínimo da doença, o que está provado é que aumenta as perdas econômicas e sociais. Então, o que acontece? Acontece hoje no Brasil que nós não temos nem controle da pandemia, nem também nenhuma política para mitigar seus efeitos. Sobre quem? sobre as pessoas mais pobres, as mais vulneráveis, a população negra do Brasil, os desempregados, os que têm emprego informal diante das reformas econômicas que tiraram direitos dos trabalhadores, que enfraqueceram os sindicatos e que tornaram a precariedade a característica principal da atividade do trabalho. O trabalho precário, o trabalho informal, o trabalho sem a menor segurança. Quando as pessoas trabalham hoje para levar para casa seu sustento hoje ainda ou amanhã, torna, diante da doença do Covid, desastrosa. Por isso que o desemprego chega nos Estados Unidos a mais de 40 milhões, porque lá não tem também nenhuma política realmente de mitigação. E no Brasil está atingindo 28 milhões de pessoas, somando o desemprego aberto e o desemprego oculto. Então, você tem uma situação que teria o governo de tomar medidas, tais como garantir uma renda mínima para as pessoas. 2, evitar que as microempresas, as empresas pequenas, elas quebrassem porque não têm acesso a crédito. E 3, tomar todas as medidas de conversão que permitam o fornecimento de equipamentos, como os equipamentos de proteção individual, máscaras, e toda a proteção que impede que o pessoal agente de saúde não seja contaminado pela própria doença que eles estão tratando. O Brasil bate o recorde de mortes e de contaminação sobre os profissionais de saúde, sejam eles médicos, enfermeiras e agentes de saúde. Eu quero dizer que também essas duas coisas deixaram nu, mas nu, um sistema de saúde que não tem seu foco principal sobre a saúde pública. Vocês vejam que o Reino Unido foi o grande exemplo de sistema de saúde universal. Foi dali que nós tivemos também a inspiração para fazer o Sistema Único de Saúde no Brasil. Mas o que aconteceu no Brasil? No Brasil, nunca houve um empenho para que você garantisse um sistema de saúde forte, mesmo ele sendo público. E agora, com o governo do ilegítimo do Temer e o governo neofascista do Bolsonaro, eles desmontam a saúde, porque eles, por exemplo, na Amazônia, vamos começar com a Amazônia precisava de médicos. Tinha municípios da Amazônia que nunca tinha visto um médico. Daí a grande mortalidade no que se chamava distritos sanitários de saúde na Amazônia, que não tinha médico. Além disso, não havia todo um equipamento para garantir que a saúde, a atenção básica, que é a primeira atenção, fosse bem conduzida. Na verdade, eles destruíram o que nós construímde nos 13 anos dos nossos governos. Por quê? Quando eu criei o programa Mais Médicos, trazendo mais 18 mil médicos para o Brasil, e com isso atendendo, pelos dados da OPAS e da Organização Mundial de Saúde, 63 milhões de pessoas, esses médicos profissionais, eles tinham por base atender justamente o pessoal que não tinha assistência. Quem é? Negros, mulheres, enfim, vou sintetizar, 54%, 55% da população brasileira. E vamos lembrar que o Brasil é o segundo país negro, considerando a África, e o primeiro país negro fora da África. nós temos a maior população negra. Então, aqui no Brasil, que tem essa herança escravista, a população negra, falar em questão social está ligado também à questão racial. E também à questão de gênero, também mulher negra, mãe, sozinha, criando filho. Todo esse processo surge, a pandemia faz surgir, ela não cria, ela simplesmente deixa aparecer. E aí, nós temos um problema seríssimo, que é a condução. Então, crise do coronavírus, crise econômica e social, e você tem um governo que é contra reconhecer a Covid-19 como sendo uma doença gravíssima, como tendo de ter providências seríssimas do governo. Gasto e mais gasto, porque tem de impedir que as pessoas morram e tem de garantir que elas sobrevivam no isolamento. Ele não faz nada disso, não gasta sequer o orçamento que está liberado pelo Congresso Nacional no Brasil. Os gastos, todos os gastos deste governo são menores do que ele tem autorização para gastar. Isso é gravíssimo, porque no Brasil falta respirador, falta máscara, falta equipamentos profissionais de segurança sanitária daqueles que lidam com a doença. Falta leitos. Leitos não é de UTI, não é igual a camas. Leitos de UTI é todo um aparato para garantir que as pessoas sobrevivam. Esse governo, que não tem sensibilidade diante da vida e da morte, esse governo é um governo que tinha já todo um aparato fascista, neofascista. Porque no Brasil, ao contrário do que ocorreu na Europa e nos Estados Unidos, o neoliberalismo e essa crescente desigualdade que afeta o mundo, o neoliberalismo nos Estados Unidos e na Europa se deu nos marcos da democracia liberal. No Brasil, depois de 4 eleições presidenciais consecutivas, que nós barrávamos a agenda neoliberal, eles deram um golpe. O golpe de 2016, alegando questões orçamentárias. Nenhum presidente em nenhum país do mundo sobreviveria a um golpe de Estado se alegassem contra eles questões orçamentárias absolutamente legais que eles tornaram criminosas. Bom, mas eles deram esse golpe. Esse golpe produziu uma enchente. Essa enchente foi a Lava Jato, que o nosso jornalista exemplar, Greenwald, conseguiu, através de um processo muito importante de realidade jornalística, denunciar e desvendar, que mostrava esse instrumento como um instrumento muito importante para destruir a democracia no Brasil, não da forma como destruíam na época do golpe militar, que é botar os tanques na rua. A América Latina viveu isso, no período, nos anos 60, 70, 50. Não, este golpe era diferente. Se você imaginar a democracia como uma árvore, no caso do golpe de Estado, a árvore era cortada por um machado. Neste golpe, agora, ela é corroída por fungos e parasitas. Ou seja, você corrói a democracia por dentro. E aí, depois da Lava Jato, teve o governo Temer, que colocou austeridade no orçamento, reduzindo brutalmente o gasto em saúde. E isso fez com que desmontassem o que havia sido montado, que acabassem com os 18 mil médicos aqui dentro do Brasil, que destruíssem o investimento em todas as esferas. Só único gasto garantido era para juros, era para o setor financeiro. O segundo passo foi, então, junta esse governo que desmonta toda a agenda de desenvolvimento com inclusão social, junta com a Lava Jato, e o que ele provoca? Ele provoca uma coisa muito irônica, a destruição do centro, da centro-direita e da direita no Brasil. E aí não há alternativa. A alternativa é impedir que o Lula seja candidato. Impediram. Não é que só o Lula é inocente, não é esse o problema. Se fosse só esse, era uma questão que se resolvia no judiciário. Não. Impedir o Lula tem um conteúdo político estratégico, é impedir que o Brasil volte a um determinado trilho. E esse trilho é o trilho de desenvolvimento econômico e social, mas também de independência geopolítica, porque nós não tínhamos nenhum problema em relacionar com nenhuma potência, aí incluído os Estados Unidos, mas não nos dispunhamos a ser submissos. Bom, então tiram o Lula da pauta, mas, ao mesmo tempo, destroem a direita, a centro-direita e o centro. E aí, quem é que surge? Surge o neofascismo, a extrema-direita, e o neoliberalismo faz uma aliança com o neofascismo. E o neofascismo, ele no primeiro ano, ele simplesmente funcionou dizendo o seguinte: nós não vimos para reconstruir, nós vimos para destruir certas instituições extremamente desnecessárias. Isso significa destruir direito de trabalhador, perseguir movimento social, privatizar todas as estatais e, sobretudo, e aí entra uma questão muito importante de soberania, que é condenar a Amazônia. Porque a Amazônia é uma forma desregulamentar, porque sobre a Amazônia tinha um sistema de controle no Brasil. Sobre a Amazônia tinha um sistema de regulação pesado. Ele desmonta, começa a ser desmontado no governo Temer. Ele completa o desmonte, ele impede a fiscalização e ele abre a Amazônia para o que era o objetivo? Abra a Amazônia para exploração mineral. Por quê? É sabido que a Amazônia tem reservas extraordinárias de minério, tem reservas extraordinárias, né, de lítio, das chamadas terras terras raras. Então, há esse impulso de abrir. Não é só para o setor agropecuário, não. É fundamentalmente para o setor mineral. Então, abra a Amazônia. Permita que a Amazônia seja aberta. E aí, quando ele desmonta o sistema de controle, ele desmonta também todos os mecanismos de proteção que existia de proteção à floresta. Nós tínhamos reduzido o desmatamento. Você reduz o desmatamento com 2 movimentos. Um de coerção. Tem de ter coerção. Tem de impedir que desmatador entre, tem de impedir que haja exploração agrícola e agropecuária, e tem de botar toda a estrutura de coerção do Estado em cima. Tem de prender, tem de julgar, tem de tornar crime o desmatamento. Então, ele desmonta essa e desmonta a outra, que é dar alternativa, porque você não pode fazer isso e não dá alternativa. Então, também ele deixa o norte do país, onde vive 20 milhões de pessoas, completamente desprotegido. 2 coisas vão acontecer. Não só vai aumentar imensamente, né, o desmatamento ele vai ter a mesma atitude do Trump. Nós fizemos aquele acordo de Paris com grande esforço. O Brasil foi um participante fundamental para fazer o acordo de Paris. Ele deixa esse aspecto, mas também ele deixa outra coisa. Por que que as mortes? Por que que o Covid ataca mais forte a Amazônia? Por que que é o Norte e o Nordeste onde isso ocorre? Porque no Brasil há uma grande desigualdade regional. Então, o desmonte do sistema de saúde, que era mais frágil na Amazônia, onde a gente tinha botado mais recursos, ele desmonta esse sistema. E hoje você tem um número de mortes, se você olhar o Brasil, o que você vai ver? Primeiro, subnotificação. Os números possivelmente estão entre 7 a 9 vezes maiores do que aparecem. 2, o que você vê além disso? Subnotificação. Uma distribuição social perversa. Morre mais pobres e negros, morre mais indígenas. Proporcionalmente à população, no caso dos indígenas. E morre mais e tem maior concentração de morte nas regiões onde se concentra a maior pobreza no Brasil. Então, no Brasil, tem uma questão que ela impera e perpassa todas as outras. A questão da desigualdade, a questão do que significa um país ter uma tradição escravista. Porque o escravo não foi só o povo brasileiro, que é todo originário desse sistema. Mas a elite brasileira, ela foi comprometida por uma visão oligárquica, na qual o povo não tem a devida importância. E é por isso que foram capazes de apoiar o Bolsonaro. Agora, diante da crise, o Bolsonaro ele tinha de fazer o quê? Ele tinha de gerir o país, ele tinha de unir o país. Né? Porque como é que você enfrenta politicamente uma crise? Você cria unidade, tem de criar, olha, a unidade em torno de um objetivo comum. E tem de fazer outra coisa, diminuir o confronto. E, além disso, tem de garantir que todos os recursos do país se dirijam para isso. Ora, no mundo inteiro, passando pelo ex-CEO do Banco Central Europeu, o Mário Draghi, passando pelo Powell, lá nos Estados Unidos, do Fed, defende o gasto público, dizendo o seguinte: vai ser uma época de dívida. Vai ser uma época de dívida. Os países vão ter de aumentar as dívidas. E isso significa que vai ter de gastar, garantir que as pessoas não morram, que os trabalhadores sobrevivam, que não tenha essa... Porque no Brasil, até o nosso querido Jeremy Corbyn falou uma coisa muito importante, nem a moradia permite que as pessoas possam se isolar. Então, tem de ter formas pelas quais você proteja essas populações. Tem lugares que não tem água para lavar as mãos. Quando nós estávamos no governo, tinha estrutura para levar a água onde estava seco. Como é que agora não tem? Desapareceu a estrutura. Então, você tem hoje esse problema do Bolsonaro. Mas, além disso, o Bolsonaro olhou e considerou que era uma ótima oportunidade para fazer duas coisas. Ele tinha de governar e não governou. Ele tinha de gerir e não geriu. Mas ele fez duas coisas. Ele, primeiro, incentivou, igualzinho o Trump, incentivou movimentos que pediam a flexibilização. E no Brasil, a elite também pediu flexibilização. Está subindo exponencialmente a contaminação, está explodindo as mortes e eles pedem flexibilização, eles querem flexibilização. porque não são eles que morrem. Segundo lugar, ele percebeu que ele poderia aumentar a pressão para maior autoritarismo. Então, não só fez manifestações em prol da intervenção militar e da ditadura, mas começou a ameaçar com o fechamento do país. E fazia sistematicamente críticas às instituições. É esse o quadro que está. Nós defendemos que a questão democrática no Brasil passa pelo afastamento do Bolsonaro e por novas eleições. O centro, a centro-direita e a direita, que fizeram um acordo com Bolsonaro, diante dos absurdos que ele fez com a Covid, dizendo que era só uma gripezinha, que as pessoas podem morrer, da falta de solidariedade com as famílias e com os mortos, eles se afastaram dele. Mas não se afastaram a ponto de romper inteiramente com ele. Eles querem um Bolsonaro na camisa de forças. Querem um Bolsonaro na camisa de forças domado. Por quê? Porque eles temem que qualquer ruptura provoca a volta de quem? Do PT, dos partidos de esquerda, dos movimentos sociais, etc. Então, você vive hoje no Brasil o que eu chamaria de um equilíbrio catastrófico. Não há uma paralisia nas alternativas. Eu sou uma pessoa otimista. Eu acho que é impossível. Eu já passei. Bom, eu fui presa na ditadura militar, né? Passei 3 anos presa, assisti 21 anos de ditadura e assisti à queda da ditadura. Então, obviamente, eu acho que nós vamos ter também de perceber que, historicamente, essa situação ela é impensável. Eu não acredito que nenhum país no mundo, nessa saída da pandemia, não vai olhar a questão da desigualdade. Não vai olhar a questão que políticas de austeridade são incompatíveis com esse país, com esses países todos. E aí não é só o Brasil, eu acho que são todos. Vão perceber que, se continuar em certo tipo de política, o que nós vamos fazer é fomentar a extrema-direita. E isso nós não podemos deixar acontecer. Eu saúdo também toda a política consequente levada à frente pelo Bernie Sanders, a capacidade de falar em socialismo, a capacidade de falar que tem de tributar as altas rendas e as heranças, a capacidade de dizer que nós temos de olhar também uma nova forma, uma forma de desenvolvimento que seja uma espécie de pacto verde, de pacto de desenvolvimento verde. Então, eu quero encerrar dizendo o seguinte: para mim foi uma grande oportunidade estar aqui, numa live com uma importante parlamentar que foi solidária sempre com o Brasil e que mostra com essa solidariedade um caminho que nós temos de ter. Nós temos de largar mão da relação individualista que quer só ter vantagens individuais e que não percebe a força que tem na cooperação e no compartilhamento. Queria agradecer mais uma vez o Glenn pela coragem jornalística, pela decência na prática do jornalismo e pela firmeza e coragem com que enfrentou uma série de ameaças contra ele e sua família. E queria, finalmente, dizer para o Jeremy Corbyn que eu torci muito pela vitória dele, porque era muito importante uma pessoa com a visão que ele tem da Inglaterra, do Reino Unido e da Europa ter tido esse papel nesse momento tão frágil do mundo. eu fico imaginando como seria importante ter ele como primeiro-ministro. É uma coisa que geralmente outros ex-presidentes, nem presidentes, falam a respeito do país dos outros, mas eu estou falando pela minha admiração pela liderança dele. Então, queria encerrar agradecendo muito a participação nessa live.
Thank you so much for that. That was absolutely fantastic and brilliant. And thank you for your kind words and really for highlighting in very clear terms the situation that we find ourselves in Brazil. The fact that we've got such a person in office fueling hatred, fear, and further demonizing marginalized groups, rolling back the limited gains made on climate change, on racial and sexual equality, and so on. And I remember actually just 20 years ago, Brazil was one of the launch pads for what became known really as the anti-globalist movement. It was here under a radical regional government that the first World Social Forum was held, an attempt to counter the elite gathering in Davos in Switzerland and so on. Those were the days I remember about Brazil, and I think it's tragic where we've come to now, and you've highlighted so brilliantly the situation. So just thank you for that. We have some questions from our audience who've just been so massively important to all of this debate tonight. They have put so many questions, and I just want to pull out a couple of those questions, if I might, just to put them to the panel. The first question that I can put to the panel is this, and if I might, and it says, the first question is, the far right have shown that they are able to coordinate globally to devastating effect. What can progressive people here in the UK, in the US, in Brazil, and everywhere do to build an international movement to counter them? So if I can ask that to the panel, maybe Glenn, I don't know if you want to start, and then if others can, if Dilma and Jeremy, if you can come in.
Yeah, I think the question highlights a really important aspect of even this event, that we have three people on the panel, one from the United Kingdom, one from Brazil, and then myself, even though I live in Brazil, from the United States, that has very similar political patterns where all three countries are governed by a far-right leader and a far-right movement that even a few years ago, let alone a couple decades ago, would have been considered unthinkable. And I think one of the things we need to do as people who oppose this kind of neo-fascist, far-right trend that's taking place throughout the democratic world is, number one, realize that the trends are very similar, that they have created an international movement and use each other's themes and ideas with the recognition that the political trends they're exploiting are not domestic but international. And I think it's imperative that people on the left do the same. And that's why I think, the work that Jeremy has done in forging bonds with leaders like Lula and Dilma and creating an international left are so important. But also we need to do some self-critique as well, and ask ourselves, why is it that in countries that elected Barack Obama, the first African-American in the history of the United States, that 4 elections in a row elected a center-left or a left-wing party like the Workers' Party in Brazil, that was poised to elect one of the most amazing left-wing leaders in British history, and Jeremy Corbyn, instead made these right-wing choices. And I think the reason is because of a lot of the prevailing ideology in these countries has been ones that have forgotten the workers, the working class, people who are marginalized. And so creating a left-wing political project internationally that speaks to the people who feel neglected by a left-wing political project, I think is a really important priority. It's easy to sort of point fingers and identify villains. It's a lot harder to look inward and engage in some self-critique, but I think that's urgent. That's what's most urgently needed.
Jeremy, do you want to come in?
response globally to the COVID crisis has been enormous, and it has made people stop and think for a moment. The murder of George Floyd in the United States made people think all over the world. There were global demonstrations in exactly the same way as in 2003, there were global demonstrations against the Iraq War. And I think the global response to Black Lives Matter and the understanding of the racism of the United States and the racism of Europe and other countries as well means that we've got to develop a global consciousness about how we deal with these issues, an understanding of global history, an understanding of what the slave trade was about, the profits, the massive, huge profits that were made from the slave trade of taking African people, killing many of them on the way to the Caribbean and North America, and the profits that most came to Europe in exactly the same way there were slaves in Brazil, the profits of which mainly went to Portugal. And so it's understanding that history around the world, because an understanding of history or a misunderstanding of history fuels the racism of today. And so I think we have a very big job to do on cultural understanding. Now, we used to do cultural understanding by exchanging pamphlets, by letters, by leaflets, by books. And all of those means are very, very important, particularly the books. But we also have instant communication in a way that previous generations never had at all. The fact that we can now have, I'm sitting in my house in London, having a very interesting conversation with Dilma and with Glenn and Claudia, who's just down the road from me. And it's the simplicity of that communication is about building that consciousness. But it's also understanding the global economic atmosphere in which we live, in which the big institutions, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, essentially pursue a neoliberal agenda. They lecture individual governments of the need for austerity, for cutting back on public spending, on opposing public ownership, and saying the only way forward is free market economics. Well, free market economics brings you poverty, brings you environmental disaster, and brings you horrendous working conditions in Bangladesh, in India, in China, and in many other places where the lowest paid workers are producing the garments that we all buy all over the world. A sense of international solidarity can begin to change that. And so I think the words that Glenn said on this are very, very profound. We need to build up that sense of international unity and international solidarity around specifics. International campaign on Black Lives Matters. International campaign in support of your campaign for justice and democracy in Brazil. International campaign to support the 65 million people around the world who are refugees through no fault of their own and deserve to have security and a place to live. There's a young generation out there that want to see a better and different world, and they're prepared to march, to meet, to argue. They're prepared to campaign for it. Let's make sure we're with them. We're not just handing down managerial economics, which end up playing into the hands of the IMF and end up privatizing our precious public assets.
Excellent. And Dilma, just on that question. Can we unmute Dilma?
Agora eu acho que está bom, né? Eu acredito que o que falou o Jeremy Corbyn é muito importante. Acho que interessante como nessa questão das vidas negras importam, houve um movimento internacional. Mas eu queria falar, sobretudo, sobre essa questão da internacional de direita que existe. No caso, inclusive, aqui do Brasil, o Steve Bannon teria nomeado para a direção do chamado The Movement o filho do Bolsonaro, chamado Eduardo Bolsonaro. Não estão escutando? Tem algum problema? Não? Tem problema ou não? Tá, então eu vou continuar, né? Tá. Eu queria também observar uma coisa. Aqui na América Latina, ao longo da década principalmente final de 90, início de 2000, houve muitos governos progressistas. E nós construímos um relacionamento muito forte, no sentido de que achávamos que ou construiríamos a cooperação entre nós, ou a América Latina jamais, de fato, deixaria de ser o continente mais desigual do mundo. Nós todos, de alguma forma ou de outra, até recentemente, tínhamos sido alijados do poder, ou através de golpes de Estado, ou através de perdas eleitorais. E também tivemos duas grandes vitórias, que foi na Argentina, com Alberto Fernandes, e no México, né, nos anos recentes. Nós construímos um movimento entre nós, chamado Grupo de Puebla, que foi fundado em Puebla, e que abarca ex-presidentes, ex-ministros, ex-senadores, deputados, enfim, lideranças em geral, representantes de movimentos sociais, intelectuais. Esse Grupo de Puebla pensa justamente as questões relativas a essa realidade em que nós temos, de um lado, tá, a questão de termos de compreender por que houve golpes de Estado, a questão que o Glenn coloca. Onde erramos? Quais as questões que nós temos de lidar com elas para alterar essa situação? Mas também nós olhamos toda esse novo movimento. A América Latina, um pouco antes do Covid-19, foi estremecida por movimentações de jovens e de pessoas que estavam considerando que elas tinham sido simplesmente alijadas dos benefícios da riqueza e da sociedade em cada um dos países. E nós vimos isso em manifestações no Chile, no Equador, por toda a América Latina. E é algo que foi muito importante, porque tem permitido uma reflexão. Porque entender por que é que, depois de um tempo imenso, né, que não é tão em tempo imenso, mas da nossa perspectiva de vida, surge novamente movimentos de direita, é crucial. É crucial entender por que surgem movimentos de extrema-direita. No caso dos países latino-americanos, tem algumas explicações que não são as mesmas, eu acho, iguais dos países europeus, mas que têm pontos em comum. No nosso caso, tem toda uma questão que está relacionada à forma pela qual as elites, que são aquelas que reproduzem sistematicamente o golpe, não conseguiram ser desmontadas. Isso é uma coisa. Outra questão, não houve uma avaliação e não houve um reconhecimento necessário do processo, não só do processo de mudança econômica e social, mas do processo de mudança nas mentes e nos corações. Enfim, toda uma discussão. Aquilo, por exemplo, que a Naomi Klein fala, né, a respeito do capitalismo de choque. Diante da crise, você aproveita e torna o politicamente impossível no politicamente inevitável. No caso dos golpes, né? Do que ocorreu no Equador, do que ocorreu aqui no Brasil, do que ocorreu no Paraguai. Então, aqui nós temos isso. Agora, eu acredito, é interessante que no Grupo de Puebla participa também algumas lideranças, o ex-primeiro-ministro, por exemplo, Zapatero, participam algumas lideranças ali da Espanha. Nada impede que outros não participem, mas eu acredito que nós temos de ter um palco de discussão sobre isso, sobre a questão da juventude, a questão a questão negra, para nós, no Brasil, é fundamental. Não há política, não existe política social no Brasil que não encara o problema do racismo. Não existe. Não há como você falar em desigualdade no Brasil sem tratar dessa questão. E isso é algo que nós aprendemos no governo, mas isso só não basta. O que significa, porque no Brasil isso está intimamente ligado, o que significa, né, esse processo violento da elite brasileira ser uma elite completamente vinculada a uma visão do seu povo como coisa ainda, como mercadoria. Então, cada país tem a sua diferença. Mas eu considero que esse desafio a respeito, né, o fato de que o Bannon veio aqui e usou todos os mecanismos, porque hoje uma das grandes coisas que está sendo investigada do Bolsonaro é fake news, que nada mais é que a forma política pela qual assumiu o uso das redes sociais, né, em prol de uma eleição, e o uso de uma forma indevida, porque o financiamento dessas redes sociais é altamente comprometedor. Ele hoje está sendo objeto, tá? Porque há uma autorização, e todo mundo sabia disso antes da eleição, mas hoje há uma autorização implícita para avançarem nessa direção e investigar as relações dele, de um lado, né, com as milícias e toda uma área meio cinzenta, tipo armamento, jogos, crime organizado, etc., e fake news, que em algum ponto se encontram, inclusive. Tudo isso faz parte, eu acho, da necessidade da gente trocar informações, trocar visões e trocar concepções.
Thank you so much for that full answer to that question. It's absolutely brilliant. I've got another question here, if I may put it to the panel. And the question really goes to the heart of the sort of issues around the destructive agendas, really. But what action can we take to stop our own governments and others internationally, such as Trump, for example, facilitating Bolsonaro's destructive agenda, both in terms of the environmental, but both in terms of our environment and for the increasing authoritarianism we see today? What can we do? What action can we take to stop this? And I don't know, can we perhaps, maybe Jeremy, I don't know if you want to start, and then I'll come to Dilma and then Glenn in that order. Is that okay?
Yep, very briefly, because I think we're running up against the clock. First of all, thanks for the question. And it is essentially one about international solidarity with the people of Brazil. I have to say that the work done by Brazil Solidarity and many others is very important in informing people in this country about the situation in Brazil, but it needs to be upped a lot more. We need to get that message across about exactly what has happened with the treatment of former President Lula and the way in which Dilma was removed from office, but also the reality of what Bolsonaro is doing on corona crisis, but also the way in which he treats the democratic system and the way he treats the independent legal and judicial system, which is so important in any democracy. So it is a question of solidarity. And the trade arrangements that Brazil enjoys with the rest of the world are a trade agreement with the European Union, are obviously trade agreements with other places around the world. In the case of the European Union trade agreement, which Britain at the moment is also bound by, there is a quite clear human rights agenda to the trade agreement. And where a country denies human rights to a group of citizens, or systematically, then those trade agreements should be challenged, or in some cases completely suspended. They're quite an important avenue in which to put pressure on those governments. And so what we are doing, a number of us in the British Parliament, is by working in solidarity with Dilma, who's visited Britain and had, I think, a very good reception from the Labour Party and many other people in this country. And we want to work with you on acts of solidarity. But we will be guided by yourselves. It's not up to us in other countries to decide what happens. It's up to you to tell us the work that you want done. But we will do everything we can in solidarity, as we did during the height of the crisis over the burning of the rainforest, but it's not over yet. And we will do so over the corona crisis and the human rights crisis, which obviously exists at the present time. And let's exchange information, understand each other's history, and build that sense of solidarity. And at some point, these right-wing leaders in Britain, in the USA, and so many other countries will be gone. There will be a different future. But if we split ourselves apart as left and progressive movements into 1,000 different pieces, we might be individually very satisfied and very happy, but collectively it will have been a disaster. So we do have to be united around common core aims on human rights, on environmental sustainability, on challenging the power of global corporations, about challenging the power of militarism to start wars, and about supporting those who are victims of all of that, namely the refugee people around the world. There's a whole new generation of young people that have not been brought up in the stultified atmosphere of formal history teaching. They're teaching themselves history by their own actions. That's why the Black Lives Matter movement is, I think, so important and so significant. And when this is looked back on in 30 or 40 years' time, it will be seen as being a global turning point in that sense of unity across the globe.
Jeremy, that was a very clear message. Thank you for that. Dilma, I just want to ask you, what do you want from us in terms of stopping Bolsonaro and his destructive agenda? If I may put the question like...
Primeiro, eu tenho de reconhecer a importância que vocês tiveram em toda a campanha anterior, em que a gente estava denunciando, né, esse ataque brutal aos direitos humanos, a questão da justiça, que foi a campanha do Lula livre. Quero dizer para vocês que esse papel ele extravasa em muito, talvez o que alguém pense ou perceba do Reino Unido para cá. Por quê? Porque vocês nos ajudaram a romper certas barreiras de informação, como saía, como eram lideranças importantes, né, do Partido Trabalhista, lideranças importantes nos Estados Unidos. O que nós percebemos? O que nós vimos? Nós vimos que isso repercutia dentro do Brasil. Cada vez que vocês falavam, tinham um efeito sobre o conjunto da sociedade. Bom, eu acredito que acho que em duas coisas tem papel central. Eu acho que na questão do Covid, né, o fato de que no Brasil, eu digo isso, é muito triste dizer isso, mas há um genocídio no Brasil. Essa atitude em relação a que o Covid é uma gripezinha, que, afinal de contas, todos nós vamos morrer, e daí que é a forma pela qual o presidente se relaciona com a doença é uma questão humanitária. Ela é para além de uma questão política, é humanitária em relação ao povo brasileiro. Então, aí eu acho que essa visão é importante, porque ela tem um efeito. Ela tem um efeito na relação que diferentes segmentos aí no Reino Unido têm com o Brasil. Obviamente tem, né? Tem efeito em relação aos empresários, tem efeito em relação à imprensa, tem efeito em relação a todas as instâncias. Essa é uma. A outra questão, que é uma questão fundamental, é que vidas negras importam. Porque no Brasil essa é uma questão ainda mais forte que nos Estados Unidos. Porque nos Estados Unidos não houve uma escravidão em todos os estados da Federação Norte-Americana. Aqui houve escravidão nos 27 estados da Federação. Não houve um lugar que não tivesse claramente escravidão. É óbvio que nos lugares mais ricos da colônia concentrou-se mais o número de escravos, mas em todo o Brasil tinha escravos. E o povo brasileiro decorre disso. Quando a sua autoconsciência aumenta, no censo de 2010, 54% dos brasileiros se declararam negros ou pardos. A autodeclaração não é pura e simplesmente, né, uma objetiva avaliação, é uma subjetiva que é mais importante ainda, que significa que tem consciência da sua origem. Bom, então eu acredito que essa é a segunda questão. E tem a terceira, que eu acho fundamental, que ela inibe, que é a questão da Amazônia. Porque na questão da Amazônia, eu acho que vocês têm de fazer um movimento no sentido, até porque é uma questão global, no sentido de que terá consequências. Destruir a Amazônia, não cuidar da Amazônia, terá consequências. Agora, tem de ter um certo cuidado numa questão. Não dá para dizer o seguinte: vamos intervir na Amazônia. Por quê? Isso já foi dito, principalmente por lideranças da Europa e dos Estados Unidos, dizendo: então é uma questão de internacionalizar a Amazônia, é querer, de fato, aí diminuir a nossa capacidade de luta, porque a Amazônia é uma questão de soberania. Não é que há uma incapacidade do Brasil de cuidar da Amazônia. Não é isso. O Brasil tem capacidade de cuidar da Amazônia e demonstrou isso ao longo dos últimos 30 anos antes do Bolsonaro. O que não é possível é uma política destrutiva da Amazônia, igual foi feito pelo Bolsonaro. Então, eu só destaco isso, né, porque recentemente houve aquela proposta francesa a respeito da Amazônia.
To Glenn to just respond very briefly to that question.
Yeah, sure. So let me just briefly conclude by once again just expressing how honored I am to be on a panel with two people who I consider to be among the leading giants of world politics over the past several decades. I think Jeremy has really pioneered the way that we understand the possibility of what can happen in politics by, even when getting so close to power, refusing to change or dilute or alter his principles, which is something I don't think I've ever seen before in quite that way. And it's inspired people around the world. And also, I just wanted to say, I've said this about Dilma before many times. I've never said it to Dilma. I teach my children about Dilma's life. For people who don't know, she doesn't like to talk about it, but she went to prison during the military dictatorship that ruled Brazil, bravely standing up for basic democratic freedoms, was brutally tortured in prison, and then rose to become the first female president, elected president of a country steeped in patriarchal and sexist traditions, and also is incredibly inspiring in her own way to people around the world for what politics enables people to achieve with courage and bravery and a lifelong of dedication. And Claudia, for you as well, just being on a panel with someone who, though a longtime activist who's newly arrived to elected office, to watch someone so devoted to your principles as well, on the scene and with power in your hands where it should be. It's incredibly inspiring, and it gives me a lot of hope and optimism. And I think with the question of what can people do for Brazil, I think on the one hand, you can say, well, it's difficult to imagine that the US and UK governments, which support the most savage and repressive regimes around the world, like Saudi Arabia and Egypt and the rest, would care if Brazil abandoned democracy and Bolsonaro succeeded in his project. But on the other hand, that's not what I look to, the governments of the US and the UK. I look to what people around the world can do. And I think what Jeremy said is exactly right, that history many decades from now is going to look at this current moment where this movement that began in the United States over the killing of one African-American by a police department in Minnesota became a global movement that changed people's consciousness, shows where power comes from to change politics. It's not by asking our governments and political leaders to do things. It's by joining together with our fellow citizens with international solidarity. That's where the real power lies. And so when I look to what can protect Brazil and what can protect other countries around the world, that's what I look to. And I think this event has really captured that energy. And I'm really grateful to be asked to participate.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Glenn, for that. And thank you for your encouraging words. I want to thank really all of our excellent speakers for their insightful contributions tonight. And on behalf of everyone listening, our entire audience, I would like to really just thank Dilma, to Jeremy and Glenn for your unique and enduring contribution really to the fight for equality and social justice. It is so inspiring. I'd also want to thank the more than 30 supporting groups for tonight's event and all of our wonderful volunteers. I would like to just quickly finish by emphasizing the need for all of us across the world to stand in solidarity with Brazilians who are opposing the far right presidency of Jair Bolsonaro. This is a president, of course, who has regularly expressed his admiration for the country's former military dictatorship, which killed, tortured and injured thousands of people between 1964 and 1985. This is a president who embraces racism, homophobia and bigotry as a central part of his governance. This is a president whose clear disdain for democracy poses a very real risk of reintroducing military authorization to the world, to the world's largest country. This is a president who, despite widespread international condemnation, has continued to encourage the deforestation of the Amazon, a forest so vital to our planetary health that is often termed the lungs of the world. The health crisis has shown that the likes of Bolsonaro, the likes of Donald Trump, and to a certain extent of Boris Johnson, these are far from the champions of the poor and excluded that they pretend to be, but in fact will always put the interests of big business and private profit first. Across the globe, from the Philippines to Hungary, we are seeing the consolidation of a far-right internationalism spanning across Latin America, Eastern Europe, and the United States. It is up to all of us to oppose hatred, bigotry, and the far right, wherever it appears. That means standing in full solidarity with everyone fighting for the future of democracy in Brazil. So finally, I want to thank you, the audience, for joining us tonight to show your solidarity and support. It is vitally important that we stand together against the global far right as an international movement for social progress, equality, and human rights. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, and good night.